This is me building a $2 million a year business in public. Last month I made 139 grand, and next month I'm shooting for 167. This is a day-by-day breakdown of how I'm doing it. And I always start every video with some Q&A, then I do some growth stats, and then finally I run it out with some live strategy. Let's jump right in. This is my daily updates channel. If you leave any comment on any one of my videos, I will eventually respond. What I do is I basically go to my community tab, then scroll all the way down to the very, very bottom before I get the oldest high quality question. And then I answer it. So the very first Q&A is from CRNI Jugo. He says, "Hey Nick, thanks for all the value you put out for free. At what point did you take the leap to go from a secure job to then being fully reliant on yourself to make money? And how would you do it, knowing the good and the bad things that came with that decision? What were your requirements to reach before you did it? Thanks again, and may God bless your soul." Thank you very much, my man. You know what? I'm really happy that you asked this question because I'm thinking of recording a whole video all about it. Let me run you through my thought process. For anybody that doesn't know, I went to university for behavioral neuroscience, and my whole idea was I was going to become a doctor. And essentially, I spent a few years in various labs and stuff like that. Let me just call this journey. I spent a few years in various labs and stuff like that. So a big chunk of my life was actually spent working with rats, believe it or not. I performed a ton of animal research with rats. And so my first or second year, something like that, I was an undergraduate research assistant. And my job was basically I would tend to these rats that were doing these circadian rhythm experiments. I'd go in at 7 or 8 p.m. in the night, and then I'd swap out their feeding tables, give them new food. I'd refill their water, and then we also had to play with the rats a certain amount every day. That was just part of my job, so I would let them crawl all over me, and I'd snuggle them and stuff like that. So it was really fun. The really sad thing about that actually is when you form an emotional bond to one of these cute little critters, and then where are they all going at the end of it? They're dying, right? The whole point of it is you do these experiments, and then you chop their brains off basically, and then do a bunch of studies on it. But anyway, I did a bunch of that. Then I got kind of more and more in academia, and then I thought maybe I'd do some research, or maybe, I was kind of on the doctor path, but it would be medical research. And then I remember this one shocking moment where I was in my lab, and I kind of looked at my PI at the time, and my PI, brilliant guy, super intelligent. He was studying something that I'm not going to get into too much just for doxing reasons, but essentially he was working his ass off 12, 14-hour days. And he was begging for grant funding. And I was helping him write a grant application. And it kind of just hit me this dude's working really hard. And not only is he working really hard, but he's been in school for a very long time. I wonder how much money he makes. So I kind of went through a moment where when you are a PI at my university, you could have seen, you can see everybody's salaries, right? It lists it. And I don't know, just revenue transparency or income transparency or something. But they do it. So that was pretty sweet. So I just went on this database. I saw how much money he was making. And I was like, you serious? Dude had a bachelor's degree, then he had a master's degree, then he had a PhD, then he had a postdoc, and then he had a second postdoc. Dude was all over the place, man. We're talking best schools on planet Earth, MIT style. I'm not going to name the specific ones. But best universities on planet Earth. And then this guy was hustling his ass off. He was making 80K a year. Now keep in mind, when I say 80K, guys, I'm talking 80K CAD for, just to be abundantly clear, CAD to USD right now is 0.7. So 1 over 0.7 times, 0.7 times 80,000, 56K USD. So this guy worked his entire life, his ass off to do this research. He was making 56K USD, and he was still putting in 12-hour days. So that's kind of when it hit me that all right, listen, I have all these big dreams of wanting to do really cool things in research, and I'm spending all this time working with animals, and I see some future laid out here. But what would my life actually look like? And do I really just want to be relegated to being on my hands and knees begging for grant funding? Probably not. So yeah, that just a little bit about my journey there. I then spent the next year basically working my ass off to get what was called a research award, which was $4,500 for a 3-month research period. $4,500 would have been awarded to me for working for 3 months. So I spent 2 months applying and prepping my interviews and trying to knock this out of the park and studying all these interview strategies and tactics. And I was so stressed out about it. And I applied to this position, and then I ended up getting it, and I was awarded with $4,500. Well, I did the math on the $4,500. Like, I was working, 30 to 40 hour weeks at the lab for 3 months. That's 160 hours a month times 3 is 4,800 hours and 480 hours in total. I was making under $10 an hour during that. Like, any which way that I looked at it, basically, if I were to like do any sort of academic thing, I was not going to make that much money at all. So I kind of just ran through all the stuff, and I kind of thought about it, and I was like, all right, like, is this really what I want to do? Then I thought a little bit about medicine, because my family was, we're from Eastern Europe, and obviously the whole like immigrant dream idea of like, my son becomes a doctor and then, makes a ton of money and secures the family and all that stuff. So I thought a lot about that. And then I started doing math into how much money doctors make. And then I realized in Canada, the average like family physician, where like you open up, you have like your own clinic, or maybe like you work in somebody else's clinic, but basically it's like a business. I think the median, it was like $220,000 a year. CAD, right? CAD. So 220K CAD. So we do the math on that. Okay. 220 times 0.7, 154. So 154K. And that sounds way better than this, right? That's almost 3x that. But keep in mind, you got to go to medical school for God knows how long. Also keep in mind, every time you make an application to medical school, you're spending like a couple $1,000s basically across all the application periods. Keep in mind that you have to put all this unmarked time into volunteering. You have to have like the most perfect CV portfolio and all that stuff. And then you just got to deal with a bunch of bullshit. And then this isn't even 154K. Okay. Why? Because it's a sole proprietorship in Canada. It's like independent contractor. Okay. So sole proprietorship. So what that means is you need to pay into CPP. That's our pension plan, which is an additional few percentage points. There's no maternity or paternity leave because you're basically self-employed and you're a business owner. And then you're just at like the whims of the government. And you just like, you're around sick people all day. So, if I was really passionate about this, maybe. Now, there are other paths in medicine. I could have like gone down and become a surgeon or something like that. And, I would have made more money. But it's basically the same problem writ large. So if you just like kind of cut to the chase here, being this doctor making 154K a year, USD, by the way, this doesn't even take into account the overhead. Like if you're buying into some clinic or something like that, okay, you're renting office space to do this. Like you're paying for like the secretary. This is 154K gross, man. You're probably making like 100K after all said and done. And you just spent 10 years of your life. And then, I don't know, you're in like an additional $100,000 of debt. It doesn't make any money if you care. It doesn't make any sense if you care about money, and it doesn't make any money. So think about this. Like at the end of the day, you're just a business owner anyway, right? So if you want to make a ton of money, why not just go into business? And then once you have all this money, well, then you can do all the cool shit you want to do. Do you want to help people get better? Do you know how much easier that is to do with money? Do you want to like, when I was really young and kind of naive, I would go to all these protests back in my university, protesting some pipeline or whatever. And I believed I was virtuous and right for doing so. And I'm not making any like proclamations politically, whether like pipelines are good or bad or whatever. I think the conversation is actually extraordinarily nuanced. Depends like energy independence and the specifics of what the pipeline is and the sort of fuel it's transporting, whatever. But that's an aside. I went to all these things, and then like I'd come home and I'd tell my father, who was like a gruff Eastern European guy with like an accent, oh, like where were you, son? Oh, I was just at the protest because I believe in reducing our energy dependence on traditional fossil fuels, and I don't think it's right, and it's like going bulldozing all this land and stuff. And they'd be like, have you ever thought about getting a job? And I was like, bro, like getting a job, you're really gonna be like the old guy, like get a job, But he sat down and he actually explained it to me. And at the end of the conversation, I agreed with him 100%. He's basically like, listen, a lot of the guys that do this stuff, they're extraordinarily passionate about a cause, and whether or not the cause is right. They spend like a big chunk of their life like doing this. They go from, I don't know, protest to protest or cause, or they do all this volunteer work and they try and help people out or whatever. But he's like, how much more could they do if they just like worked and then spent that money effectively? Like time as somebody that is unskilled and that does not have access to resources is a lot less leverage than somebody that is like incredibly effective at operating in the constraints of a capitalist economy that also then just has a ton of money. He's like, if you just became a millionaire and then you spent all this time and energy that you're spending on the protests, like towards, I don't know, some sort of like grassroots activism where you're paying a few $100,000s a year, how much more outcome do you think you'd actually be able to drive if you really cared about this? And he's like, so why don't you just like focus on money instead, Nick? Like, why don't you get a job? And I was like, shit, man. So yeah, he kind of schooled me, just brutally schooled me there. And honestly, like I think about that a lot. I think about like, you know, we are unwittingly signed into the game of capitalism. We're thrown into this big football match. We have no idea what the rules are. We don't even know what football is. We don't even know what the ball is, and we don't know what the enemies and the allies look like. But we just are thrown in, and we have to start kind of live or die, right? If you're thrown into this game, and this is the game you're probably going to be playing every day for the rest of your life, why not just get really good at the game? You can worry about all these additional things you want later. Like, just get really good at the game. If me working my ass off for 15 years to like become some academic guy allowed me to work on my hobbies and pursue my passions or whatever. But then at the end of the day, like, at the end of the day, I was like still a bystander in this game, or like the lowest level character in this like NFL football match. Like, why does any of that matter? Doesn't it make more sense to just get really good at the game first? And then once you're really good at the game, you can worry about, helping the side quests, so to speak. So that's kind of my mindset on that. I know it might be silly and kind of a roundabout way of giving you some of my history, but it was basically right after then, right as I was coming out of university, that I was like, all right, I don't think this doctor stuff is going to work for me. I'd already said no to the medicine stuff, to the academic stuff. So I don't think this doctor stuff's going to work for me. I'm just going to go into business for myself. And it was probably one of the shittiest decisions a man could have made. It was freaking brutal. My parents and my extended family and everybody just thought I was a moron. Everybody that I knew judged me. Oh, you're an entrepreneur. Oh, right. Okay. What are you doing? Oh, you're going door to door selling marketing packages. Good luck. I experienced like a ton of social shame. I failed a bunch of times. I was dead broke. And then, I eventually had to like get a job essentially because I had no idea what I was doing. I had no skills. I had nothing. So if I could go back in time, would I done it the same? Probably not. I probably would have like gotten a job first. It would have been a job in some hyper relevant industry that I would have wanted to start a business in, that I would have seen some return on investment in. Then I would have done the job, and then I would have gotten paid to learn. And then I would, once I'm sufficiently established, which might have taken me a year or something. Once I've like done a lot of stuff and I've done a lot of doing basically, then I would take that doing and then maybe, spend some of those resources to kickstart a business. Which is why anytime somebody comes in maker school and is like, Nick, I'm working a 9 to 5. I really want to quit my job. Should I quit my job? My answer to them is always like, no, don't quit your job. Try and run a business under the constraints of your job. If you can operate a successful business with 4 hours in your day instead of 12 or something, how much better do you think you'll be able to operate that business when you do end up quitting that job and you have all that time available to you? Don't operate from a position of scarcity, operate from a position of abundance. It's a lot easier to zoom out and see further. Not to mention, if we're just talking tactically, I mean, you can get all these software subscriptions that you otherwise probably wouldn't be able to justify if you're a total newbie. You could buy leads that you otherwise would be really hesitant to. You can make Upwork applications that you'd otherwise be like, oh my God, it's $1.50 every time I do it. So yeah, I understand that was a roundabout way of answering your question, but just to give everybody some context, that is what I would do if I went back in time. Shark Swayze says, speaking of watches, I got the same white yellow Richard Mille as Jake Paul. I don't know what a Richard Mille is. Let's see. Okay, my internet decides to be slow today. That is Richard Mille. That's cool. I'm not really much of a watch guy, to be honest. I don't think I'd. How much is this? 350,000? Huh. Yeah, I don't. That's a lot of money, man. You're pretty loaded, Shark Swayze. And dude, like every time I see you got a new profile pic. Bro, you're probably loaded, man. Oh, hell yeah. Let's go, dude. Dude, you didn't have this up on your channel last time I mucked around here, did you? That's legendary. Yeah, so I don't know Shark Swayze in person, but like this guy's... Man, I mean, that's some energy for sure. I like it. Okay, Maven Studio Marketing says, thank you for such a great result. Shark then says, I'm just here for the algo. Thank you, my dude. And then Moise says, why Calgary? With your goals and income, can you move somewhere else more advantageous? Asking as a fellow Calgarian. Cheers. I live in Calgary, Alberta. That's in Canada. It's not always the nicest place here. It's actually freezing, frigid outside. We just had a big dump of snow and it's like almost April. Literally one day to April. So I think Moise's question is well founded. Why would you live in Calgary when you could presumably live anywhere else you want in the world? Couple things. I got some family here with roots. I've built like a strong like local community. Well, maybe not the strongest local community, but I have a few friends that I really enjoy spending time with. I have a relationship here. I have a few things that are kind of keeping me here, to be honest. But yeah, I have considered leaving, and I don't think I'm going to be here forever, for sure. You know, advantageous is a relative term. I think that there's like a lot of hustle and bustle in a lot of these bigger cities. Like my buddy's in New York right now, and he was just showing me like pictures of these towers, and he was showing me his apartment. And one thing that he said is like, dude, you can't find a good apartment for less than $12,000 a month here. Now he makes several $100,000 a month, so for him it's not a big deal. But he's like, it's interesting, and I was like, huh. So I went to the rental websites in Calgary, and then I realized I couldn't find a really nice apartment for like more than $12,000 here. Like if I had that money and I wanted to spend it, like I legitimately couldn't spend it. And I was talking CAD and he was talking USD. So there's a difference there as well. So I feel like there's actually something to be said about living somewhere where the floor is high and then it's just constantly like going up and up and up. If you need to make, let's even say $6,000 a month in order to like live and operate a life in New York, USD, just to pay your rent, like you're going to make it work. You're going to figure it out, right? If not, you're not going to be in New York. So it's kind of like a live or die mentality. You don't really have a choice. But yeah, I also think some people take this stuff to excess. Like I think a lot of people that live in Dubai, for instance, I see this trend in a lot of like the people in my communities that are from Dubai. I think just because it's like such a more like wealth focused culture, I think a lot of people just get caught up in the wealth, and I think that they kind of lose track of why they're doing what they're doing. I think that applies to New York a lot as well. Money doesn't really. It's no longer like an object that gets you from point A to point B. It's just like it's point B itself. It's like all that you really go for. So. Yeah, hopefully that answers a question. Obviously, there's many more networking opportunities and stuff like that outside of Calgary, but this is where I'm at for now, so I'm going to make the most of it. NJH Ariana-D1N says, can you show us how you record videos? What's your setup? How do you set up OBS and more? Yeah, sure. I'll show you right now. One sec. Okay, so I'm in OBS right now, right? I just disabled this feature that said hide OBS from capture. So normally I hide it. And then basically I have two scenes. You see on the left-hand side here, there's one that's main, there's one that's screen share and overlay. So if I click main, what I'm going to do is I'm going to click this button, and my screen's going to pop up. It's just going to be my face. So I just click that button and now it's just my face. All right. So this scene is set up to only record my face. There's just one input, a video input. It's my face. And then I stretch it out to like match the whole 1920 or pixels or whatever my display is. And then this is what I talk with at the beginning of my video. And then anytime I want to make a point, so I'll just like, I'll switch to this live. Then if I click the screen share plus overlay button here, you can see that we've now changed and we're now in this like kind of weird screen share look. Now, why do we have this infinite repeating mirror thing here? Well, it's because I'm screen recording a page that is showing me a screen recording of a page, which is showing me a screen recording of a page, showing me a screen recording of a page. So that's why we have that infinite mirror effect. But basically if I just move this, kind of this window off to the left, you see like, you're seeing the main screen recording over here now of the comment feed, right? So this is kind of confusing and it was kind of weird to me. I was like, how exactly does this work? Why do I see this infinite mirror thing? The only reason you see the infinite mirror thing is just because we're screen recording this screen right now because I'm trying to show you stuff. Okay, and then I have a bunch of sources here, and I've just meticulously set up all these sources because I figured it was like a free win. If I could just make my content look a tiny bit better than everybody else's content, and it takes me 15 minutes to do so, even if that's like 2% on my metrics, people just like watching this, or they're like, Nick has a good eye for design. It's 2% that I win in every single video from now until the end of time. It takes me no additional upkeep or anything. So, I have the camera feed, so that's what this is. If I click this view button, I'm going to disappear, and I'm going to do that on purpose. So now underneath it, you see I have like a shadow, right? So shadow, I don't know, it just kind of like produces a little bit of visual separation from the background. So if I delete it, that's that. So if I go to my camera and then I show you the shadow and not show, you see how there's just that slight little difference? By the way, this red stuff here that you're seeing is just distances from the top, let's say, of the screen to this bubble. And it's only showing because I'm actually clicking on the element. But if I just click off of it or something like this, then you don't see any of that. Okay, so shadow on, shadow off, shadow on, shadow off. I'm going to turn off my screen recording as well, my face recording. Screen capture over here, that's this main thing that you're seeing. So if I turn this off, what are you now seeing? Well, now you're actually not seeing my screen at all. You're just seeing like this wallpaper as well as another shadow in the middle. Okay, and then actually shit, you can't see anything now. What am I doing? Anyway, if I turn this off, you just see the background, right? And then you're probably going to see a shadow as well. I take it, and I can turn the shadow off. And then finally I have two more, and that's the microphone and the background. So what happens if I turn the background off? You guys just see black. So let me just reproduce this now. Awesome, and I'm back. That's my setup. I really like this setup because, I just get to record directly from my camera and I don't have to like take the memory card, plug it in. I don't have to do any transfer times. It's not the highest quality way to record a video, just FYI. So I do lose a little bit of recording quality, but to me, that's not really important. Again, I just care about the 80-20. It's just like, okay, what's a quick win? If I can eliminate the amount of friction that goes into me producing one of these videos. And if it's as simple for me as literally, I turn on my camera and then I press a button and then I just say my script and then I answer questions. Then, how much more content am I really going to be able to produce over the course of the next year? A lot, right? So anyway, just to make my life easier, I'm going to go back to the screen share thing. And then I'm going to turn on the hide OBS from capture. So it's going to make this disappear and you'll just be able to see the rest of my screen. Cool. Yeah, I think I'm going to leave it there because I know it's already been 20 minutes. Hopefully that gives you guys some context into my life and where I've come from. Let's talk brand stats. We've had a couple of really good days here. And the main reason why is just because I've been producing content again, or publishing content again, I should say. So in my daily updates channel, I have 2,295 subscribers now. So we've gone up by 25 since the last 24 hours. On my Instagram, which I can get by going to blastup.com/Instagram-follower-count _Nick_Saraev, we appear to be lagging. Maybe I lied. Maybe you can't get it from there. Well, that's annoying. Maybe there's some issue with it right now. Okay. Well, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go on my phone. The thing is I have, what's called Opal on. It's a little like, it's like an app blocker basically that makes it impossible for me to access apps like Instagram and stuff during the workday. So I actually have to physically go over here and then I have to disable it. And then once I disable it, then I'll be able to go on the Instagram. If you guys haven't screwed around with this stuff, by the way, I really like it. It's not like I'm like super addicted or whatever to social media, but if I make social media even less accessible for me, then just look at the math. Like I spend more time working, and then more time doing things. Okay. So my actual follower count is going to it right now. Professional dashboard. 68,234. Okay, there we go. Yeah, and this is just some server error, so don't sweat that. 68,234. Okay, so we got up by 2,400 in the last 24 hours. The reason why is because, man, we were cooking with this video. This Manus one, 479K views. Immediately before, I got one with 208K. Immediately after, it was 250. So, I mean, dude, we've been crushing it. We've been like, I think, the guy that's helped me with this Instagram, he told me that in the last 24 hours, I got over 400,000 views. Which is just nuts. And that's not accounting all of my content. I think that was just on like that one, I think. Maybe I'm wrong. But if you take into account all of my content views across like YouTube as well, and like this channel and stuff, like, man, like in a single day, I basically reached half as many people as are in the entirety of like the greater Vancouver area or something, where I used to live. Or no, sorry, 2 times as many people that live in Vancouver, which is crazy for me to think about. Sure, some of them watched 2 seconds of my face, but it's like, man, that's some freaking exposure, huh? Doing entirely organically too. Crazy. Anyway, so let's go down over here to my main channel and see the sub count, 64,347. Gained 672 since yesterday. That can be explained by a couple things. The main one is, well, I published 2 videos in a row. So the second that you do that, big spike. And then normally when you haven't published in a while, there's a spike as well. I'm kind of curious to see what the revenue increase is like. I'm not really seeing it. Yeah, it's still 145. I think it'll probably be like up here. I think I'm probably like $400 in ad revenue or something crazy. I think my sub count's going to jump up as well. And I think I'm going to have like 600. And oh, this is the most views I've ever gotten, by the way, in 48 hours, like 45,000. Never been that high. I'm just realizing that my battery's exhausted again. And that's just because I was not smart and I did not, I did not plan for recording a video right now. I just ended up doing it in between another task that I was doing. So I'll just leave it there. But yeah, I mean, pretty freaking badass, right? So we have a bunch more in the pipeline that are coming through, but I'm glad that we published twice in a row and I'm just going to nonstop publish. And that's what I'm going to use to pump things up. Really cool thing about Maker Schools, I think we just crossed $90,000 in monthly revenue. We did right there, 92,176. So actually in the last like 24 hours, we've gotten like $3,000 in MRR. My churn rate is really high. It's still about 20%. I want to get that down to 15. So the main thing that I'm going to be doing today is I'm going to be creating what's called a community exclusive. It's on my task list. But essentially what I want to do is I want to record content that is exclusive for Maker School and makemoneywithmake.com. Anything I put in Maker School, by the way, everybody in makemoneywithmake.com will just have access to by default, because I want to like tier it so that people in makemoneywithmake.com obviously they have access to those resources plus more. That's kind of how I'm going to do the gatekeeping. But yeah, like I think I'll measurably be able to reduce this. Like this was like 1% higher a few days ago, and then I launched the community exclusive guide on how to do something. I think it was maybe some copywriting or something. And then this bumped down by 1%. So, I mean, like we can conceptualize the revenue increase of that, right? Like the way that churn works is you can like mathematically determine how much money this community is going to make lifetime, basically just based off the churn rate. And then assuming that you don't get a single new person in. So 92,176. And basically what you do is you divide it by the churn rate. So that's about $450,000, right? So previously, I think it was like 218. So that's 422. So 422 to 459, I basically made $37,000 literally just by making that one change, which is wild. Like literally by recording a 20-minute video or something, right? I made that much money. Absolutely insane. Just freaking crazy. So pretty stoked about that. I think things are going well on that front. And then, yeah, we got an awesome podcast coming out with Mr. Jack Roberts. I don't know if we've queued that up yet. Let me just refresh this. Yeah, sorry, we haven't uploaded that yet, but we got an awesome podcast coming out with Jack Roberts, which I'm really excited about. So in case you guys don't know, Jack Roberts runs very similar sort of product offering to me. It's not the exact same thing, but yeah, it's like reasonably similar. And I'm jazzed about that. Let me just change the input method here. I'm jazzed about that because like I really like the guy. He's really smart. He's very similar to me, I would say, in just the way he's operating business. And I've just been trying to like get closer to him. We're considering working on like a SaaS product together, which would be pretty sick if like that ends up happening. I don't know if it will. Fingers crossed. We'll see. But he's also just done me a massive solid. For the last like 3 weeks, he's just been publishing our conversations on his channel without the expectation of anything in return. And if you think about it strategically, it's better for me when he does that because like he has all these viewers and they all know him, but then he introduces me to them. And then it's like, oh, some of these people are going to be like, oh, who's that Nick guy? And they're going to go subscribe on my channel, right? But it kind of hit me like a week ago or whenever I recorded the podcast. Wait a second. Jack's just been doing this shit for me. I haven't done anything for him. So I'm going to publish one of those podcasts on my channel for sure. And then hopefully, we can get some subs over to him. If you guys like his content, please do. But yeah, that's more or less it. That's where I'm at today. So I'm going to go charge up this camera because I actually do have to do another recording. But before I do that, I got to hop on a call, which I'm 3 minutes late for. Blessed to be constantly producing these videos and answering your guys' questions. If you guys have anything that you need that I didn't answer today, and I don't know, maybe one of my answers brought up another question and you want to hear something else related to that, then just drop a question down below on this video. As you guys can see, we're at like a 4-day turnaround time right now where you'll ask a question and then on average like 4 days later right now I answer. I imagine that is just going to go up, obviously, the bigger the channel gets. So get your questions in ASAP and I'm happy to help. Have a great rest of the day. I will see y'all tomorrow.